want to pass to the wonderful Bobby to do a quick welcome to country, and then we will take it from there. So over to you, Bobby.
Thanks, Nicole. So please join me today in acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we each gather here today. I'm on the Darkinjung land. We acknowledge our First Nations people and their deep and continued connection to country and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and future, to their ancestors and descendants. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. And just to remind us all that, who is Open the Doors? Why are we here? What are we trying to do? Open the Doors is here for you to express how you feel with the changes needed in dementia and aged care around the world. A place to showcase the amazing things you're working on, researching or thinking, and a place where we can no longer work in silos, but be connected to a group of global thought leaders and global humans wishing for a better world for people with dementia, their loved ones, and their community. We continue to try and make changes. We know it's a global issue, and it's not one that's just in our backyard. So thank you for being here today. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce the wonderful Maurie. We are going to keep our cameras on. We're going to mute ourselves unless we've got something amazing to say at the end and ask a question. And we are going to hold those questions, if possible, to the Q&A today. Please do write in there if something pops in your mind that you want to discuss later on. And before we start, we will do a group photo today because it's Christmas and we all have these wonderful hats on. So if I can just get you to stop presenting for a minute, Rhiannon, if that's not too arduous, and then we'll all put our cameras on and take a quick shot. Leah's going to do a screenshot for us. Okay, amazing. If anyone wants to put their cameras on, and we'll go into tile view and we will take a little shot. So, Leah, you tell us when you're ready to go. Oh, that's lovely, Maurie. And we lost Leah. Leah, hello. We ready to take a photo?
It's done.
It's done. No one smiled.
No, it's not done. All right, I'll do a count. You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. One more?
One more. Yeah, you were looking dreamy there, Maurie. It was
me trying to be there.
Were you trying to be dreamy?
1, 2, 3. Got it.
Okay, so amazing. So who is this Maurie bloke anyway, honestly? So Maurie is a wonderful friend of mine and an amazing human being, a wonderful friend to many of us, and an inspirational human all way around. He blends his actor training skills with his expertise in the experiential model of dementia practice. Maurie engages people in residential aged care, experiencing cognitive and physical change. His focus is on elders who have become socially withdrawn, experiencing loneliness, grief, presenting with expressions of distress, and struggling to navigate a world that no longer makes sense to them. And no one does it like Maurie. I've heard Maurie present many times. I never, ever get sick of hearing the amazing work that he does. His performance-based observational skills, the use of actors' character research, along with his expertise in understanding human behaviour, combined with his improv skills, provide a powerful combination in inviting the elders he works in to engage and connect and find joy and love and happiness. I added all that bit at the end. I've seen him in action and I adore his work. So thank you for presenting today, Maurie. I will hand over to you and we'll talk about it at the end.
Thanks so much, Nicole. And I'll have to shorten that. That intro's quite full
on.
No, well, look, happy festive season for those that celebrate it, and thank you so much for joining us today. Rhiannon, can we move to the next slide? And I apologise that I'm not able to control the slides today, so I'm in your delicate hands there, Rhiannon. This is just a quote that drives a lot of my thinking around this work. To touch the soul of another human being is to walk on holy ground. And I believe that we probably all feel that very deeply. Next slide. So just in a nutshell, what I do, so I created this title, Creative Therapeutic Engagement, because there was no designation when people asked what it was I did and asked me for my designation. And I created that. It's a bit of a mouthful, but on paper, it gets managers to ask what's therapeutic about what I do. So I'm visiting now around about 80-ish elders in weekly one-on-one sessions, and I'm at 8 residential aged care services, some fortnightly, some weekly. And my focus is on those, as Nicole said, who are socially withdrawn, that are room focused, people living with dementia, Parkinson's, experiencing cognitive decline, stroke, experiencing grief, loneliness, boredom, trauma responses that have come to revisit them in older age, and changes in behaviour. And I don't like to use the term behaviour, but it is the term, as we know, that most people use and are familiar with. Next slide. Oh, there's a real delay in it. So it's not entertainment. It's a therapeutic intervention based on playful, relational, strategic, creative engagement. It's designed as a one-on-one intervention, and it aims to discover and reinforce positive memories, connections, memorabilia, what's important. I aim to tap into individual interests and humour, into their roles and into rituals. I aim to create mutual and meaningful engagement. Now, people talk a lot about meaningful engagement, but I think what is missing from that term is the word mutual. I think it needs to be mutual to be meaningful, and thus that's where the relationship comes from. So the work is relational. Sometimes it's about validating and offering emotional support. And the aim, of course, is to provide a sense of belonging. I keep pressing my button, Rhiannon, to get to the next slide. So let's go to the next one. So music's only a part of what I do. And one of the main things that I use are A4 sized photographs or images. And I would use these as much as I would use music. Next slide. So what I'm looking for is the same level of attunement with the images that I have found in my music. I'm looking for emotional resonance. And the thing is that when we use music, we see big responses quite often. I mean, I know we do get subtle ones, but everyone's aiming for a big response. And I think this is a trap where we forget that sometimes the most subtle response is really where we're finding emotional resonance. Next slide, please, Rhiannon. So, actor training. I know Mary Fridley's here, and I know that there are some folk that have studied, done a little bit of acting, or trained as actors or performers. And what comes to the work for me is my observational skills, an insatiable curiosity for people, which drives all of us actors. We're really curious about what drives a person. And so character research is key to creating character when you're an actor. So you will go through the script. I think somebody's got their microphone on. I'm just wondering if everyone could go on mute. I'm just hearing a microphone, I'm sorry. So looking for clues, going through the script, finding little details, little pointers, looking at history and looking at images from a certain time. If we're in the 70s, I would be looking at the politics of the time and the politics of the person. And so character research is a really big part of your actor training. And I'm just taking this and reversing that as I trawl for clues in amongst what's written about a person. And of course, reading of body language, reading of vocal tone, facial expressions of others. So let's move on to the next slide there. Oh, let's move on. Actor training superpower, research and looking for clues. Next slide. So, Rhiannon, can we come back to me? Just stop presenting for a second. So, if it's too hard. This is my first folder, and this is the folder that began everything. So I was sharing myself with my friends, and that's me as a baby. And I think that what happens is we often spend a lot of time asking elders about them and tell us about you. Why don't you, where are you from? What did you do? And I would grab my folder and I would show them photos of me. This photo has gotten me in the door so many times and unlocked the room to what has been closed to any sort of interaction. And you can see, if we go back to the presentation, that by using photographs in a folder, and we'll go back to the presentation, Rhiannon, that you're dealing with photographs and that photographic image, which is very much akin to the generation that's currently living in residential aged care, which didn't use mobile phones or for photographs or storage, but rather held them in their hand. And so I began with this folder, and that was the beginning of me sharing myself. But unbeknownst to me, I was tapping into something that I hadn't realised was going to be so powerful. So if we go to the next slide, Rhiannon. Oh, that's my brother and I. And that, for those that know the story of Din Din, which I share in my presentations, that's the home of Din Din. Din Din was a pet turkey, but that's for another presentation. Next slide. Picture books, special interest picture books. Well, they worked really well. You know, you have these picture books that you take around to your elders and you sit down and use them for discussing. But what I found with people whose dementia was more along the journey was that the picture books, one, they were very heavy, they couldn't hold them, and there was a lot of data on the page. Sometimes you have a number of photographs and I couldn't really control it. So I thought, well, why don't I just print off the things that I need? The next slide, please. And so, you know, I began this deeper strategic use of images. This began with my dear elder buddy, Joan, back in 2017. So if you go to the next slide, Joan had been a painter. She used to engage in charcoal and oils. And what I was looking at with Joan was, I began with landscapes. So we go to the next slide. So Joan, this is how she was described to me. She was described as highly anxious and restless. She was inconsolable. She was non-compliant to care, their words, not mine, refused medications. It was said, I was told that she sought sympathy, which I found was a very odd thing to say about someone. And I think that indicated to me that she was looking for connection, is what I really understood from that, wanted understanding. It was said that she'd been a deep thinker. She once had been somewhat spiritual, and I noted that she had this big Buddha in her room, a big terracotta Buddha. And she had been an artist, as I said. She was into charcoal and oils. But when any offers were made of painting or discussions about colours, Joan would refuse these. She would reject these outright, very dismissive of them. And when I watched what people were doing, they were saying, what's your favourite colour? Do you like this colour? Here's a brush. And they were trying to coax her to use these implements, which she had maybe no desire to use because she was caught up on what was happening within. The next slide, please, Rhiannon. So what I did was I showed her these beautiful landscapes, and that's a beautiful Australian bush landscape, lovely colours, beautiful, draws you right in. But Joan just dismissed it and went, and just was disgusted by it. And so I thought back about her thinking, her spiritualism, and the symbol of the Buddha, and then some of the things in her room. So I plonked this next image, Rhiannon, down in front of her. And this was the one that really spoke to her. It's very hard to describe the look on her face when Joan held this and she took it from my hand and she looked at it and she started to adopt this emotion, and she was staring at it and she said, look, that's all she said. And I said, what do you think's happening? And she said, she's sad. I said, why is she sad? I don't know. Maybe he doesn't love her anymore. Maybe he doesn't want her. maybe she doesn't want here. And she started to analyze or to express what she was seeing and feeling in the image. And it was very, very, very powerful. So we go to the next image. So I started to use the Impressionists, the Expressionists, Picasso, of course, a facilitator of all art forms, but these really strong, intense, emotional images spoke to her. And she would do the same thing. She would take them and hold them deeply and just stare at them and tell me what she was feeling. I would let her sit for about a minute without saying anything to see what would come to her. And by this stage, she began to gravitate towards me. She would start to run to me when she saw me arrive at the facility. And this was a beautiful, beautiful image for her. She would touch it. She would say, look at it. And I guess she was talking about the strokes, the powerful strokes of Van Gogh. Next image. So why does this work? Let's go to the next image. Why does this work? Well, I was speaking to a dear friend of mine, Judy Cornish, and Maylene, who is with us on the call here, is now doing the Dawn Method in Denmark. I spoke to Judy about the work I was doing and what I was doing, and she introduced me to this concept. She said, oh, what you're doing is you're appealing to the intuitive thinking skills. And I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And so Judy introduced me to this wonderful idea, which I was already doing, but I didn't understand quite what was happening. So Judy's premise is that rational thinking skills are lost with dementia. Slowly over time, our rational thinking skills diminish. But what remains are our intuitive thinking skills. And this is the zone where I inhabit. Next slide, please, Rhiannon. So if we think about this, rational thinking skills, or what's so in my offers, when I was offering a conceptual offers, they weren't really working. They may work with someone that is in a residential aged care with complex care needs, but with someone that has got cognitive challenges and is trying to navigate the world, it wasn't speaking to them. Whereas the intuitive thinking skills, they're tangible. So I started to look at what I was doing. Next slide, please. And so if we think of what's tangible, well, that's straightforward. It's something that's shown or seen. It has to be held, or it can be touched. It can be heard. So music is very tangible because music can also be experienced. And what Joan was doing, she was experiencing the art of Van Gogh, the art of Picasso, Klimt. There was all these artists that she loved. She also loved Brett Whiteley. It's also recognised by sense. Hayley Antipas really recently commented on a post, and she was talking about smells. It needs to be seen, touched. We can use hearing and, of course, taste. I don't play too much in taste because there's all these things that get in my way and around compliance. Next slide, please. So a concept then is the idea of something. It requires explanation. It has to be understood, has to be imagined, and then the elder has to want to engage in it, and then they have to want to engage with you. And this doesn't work with someone that is telling people to get out of their room. No, I don't want you. I don't want to see what you have. I'm not interested in talking. I don't even know what's expected of me. So this is what I had been doing and began to experiment more with these images I was using. Next slide, please. So tangible offers versus conceptual. Let's look at that. Next slide. And the next one, I put an extra one in. That's an extra one at no charge. Mary, look, Mary, this is an Arnott's Factory biscuit book celebrating 125 years of Arnott's. Now, what is Arnott's? Is a biscuit that's made in Australia, or were Australian, I think now maybe US owned. Arnott's Factory is based just north of Newcastle, so it's a local invention and still is one of the mainstays of the afternoon tea in most households, and especially in residential aged care. Now, Mary just beamed when she saw this, and the reason I showed her was because she used to work in a hospital out in the regional area, west here of Newcastle, and she was the tea lady, and Arnott's biscuits featured highly, and she absolutely adored Arnott's. And the reason the photo's blurry is because I was laughing because she was so excited and talking to me about the biscuits and how much she loved them. Next slide, please. This photo is another one that gets me in the door and is real tease. How could you resist this? I would often walk into a room and I would say to somebody, have you seen the size of this kid? And I'll hold it up and I'll hold it in front of my face as I walk closer and closer. And as I do, if I get the elder is looking at me and trying to figure out what I'm doing, their eyes go to the image, they change very quickly. And then I bring it forward and I reveal my face. I hold it out and usually they will reach out and point at it or touch it, or they will say, geez, a fatty, isn't he? Or something of that ilk. And that's when I say, I'm worried he's not being fed properly. And of course, we begin. And so I'm using this as an entrance point rather than going in and saying, hello, I'm Maurie. I'd like to talk to you about my grandson. Would you like to see a picture? By that stage, the whole process is going, I don't know what's expected. I don't know what you want. Next slide, please, Rhiannon. And we move into dialogue and interaction, and whether a person is able to express themselves verbally or not, or with express themselves in a manner in which I can understand, it becomes irrelevant because we have this image, which is the medium. This is the beautiful Marion, who celebrated her 102nd birthday on Sunday. I've just written a post about Marion, that's on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. Terry, my mate Terry was at the beginning of the Penrith Panthers entering the rugby league competition here in New South Wales. And Terry had been involved very, very much in the choice of the Panther as the name, Penrith Panthers as the name, the icon of the Panther leaping. He was living in the Penrith area and he was a dyed-in-the-wool Penrith Panthers supporter. Now, one thing, looking at history and going back and diving into the era, was that I knew that the Panthers came into the competition in 1967. So I wanted to know who was his team before 1967. And that's when I found out he was an old Parramatta supporter. So in that folder is some of the greatest Parramatta players of the era. There was a very dynamic Parramatta team, and I'm trying to coax him back to Parramatta. Come back to Parramatta, we need you. And so this was his whole thing. He really found that quite appealing and quite funny, that I was trying to bring him back, and he wasn't having it. The next slide, please, Rhiannon. Merv, looking at a little tin toy pedal car. Now, Merv never had anything like this as a kid. That's not his era. That's not his ilk, but it certainly was his son's ilk. That was the kind of thing that his son absolutely adored and loved, and we had a lot of laughs about that. Next slide, please. Oh, delicious invitation. Next slide. We have to, in this, using my thing is that an invitation has to be so delicious that they cannot refuse it. That's the idea. And so how do we do that? How do we make the invitation so delicious? And so we have to think about how we're going to introduce that image. But first of all, we have to also understand that we have to select the image very carefully. And once we do that, we have to have regard for a person's dismissal of the approach. So people have sometimes said to me when I talk about how I want to enter, they'll say, but you have to give the resident choice. And I say that they will have choice, because if they dismiss me, if I can see that they don't want this, I will leave. I will let that go. And it's about having that regard. But in my view, I think there's no dignity in allowing someone or having someone sit in a room that is isolated and that is lonely, that is not connected, that is anxious, that is agitated, that just doesn't feel joyful at all. I think that if they choose to stay in that space, that's their choice, of course. But I think more often than not, in my experience, that if we can find a connecting point and a connection and then foster a relationship, that they don't really want to be there. But I will always respect a dismissal. We can talk more about that. Could we go to the next slide? Varel, painter. I showed her the Picassos, hated them. Oh my God, she was disgusted, and that backfired on me. And that was a good lesson, because in her room there were landscapes, and I should have gone straight there. But I did get there, and I went back. Now, keeping in mind that Varel is someone that is focused on moving out of the service. She is waiting for a daughter, and her speech, her communication, she communicates, and it seems to be the inner narrative seems to be that she understands what's being communicated, but it's very impossible for me to understand what she's saying. But here she sits down with me, and she'll look at them for a long time, and I'll say, which one do you like? And she chose the one on the left, which is that beautiful landscape I showed earlier. And I asked her why she didn't like the other one, which I point at, and she said, dead. I said, oh, it's dead. And she said, yes, it's dead. And I said, and this one has life. And this was her interpreting, beginning to examine how it was making her feel, and tapping into, of course, there's still some rational thinking skills there. Next slide, please. And of course, I use this baby photo a lot, but I had to adapt it for my friend Nola. That was just a little bit of fun that I was having. And she has a lot of texters, so I was fortunate to have the props that I needed. Next slide. I like to play as it's so. The real question is, what image will bear fruit? What image will deliver interest and spike interest? And it's about researching the character, or as we say in aged care, the personal narrative history. What is that history? And it's just about finding a tiny weeny clue. And this is something I did recently with a bee. Let's go to the next slide. Rod. Pardon my French here, but Rod said, I don't want to see that dickhead. He thought I was a dickhead. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. He'd seen me around. He'd heard my knockabout humour. He heard me playing the ukulele, which he found very dag. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. He said, no, don't send him to me. So I looked at Rod's history, and he'd been a car salesman, and he'd sold these cars called Simcas, which I had no idea what a Simca was. There's one right up there on the right-hand side, 3 from the bottom, red with the flame job on it. It's a hotted up version. And I started to take him these sim car pictures, and discovered his dear love of cars of all types and shapes. And at the same time, I noticed that he wore yellow pants a lot, and it turned out that his favourite colour was yellow. So you'll see there's a lot of yellow cars on his wall, but I started to put these up. I would show him some photos. We'd go through some. He said he really liked this one. So I'd take it to the reception. They would laminate it for me, and it would go up on his wall. And his wall is an ever-growing wall. And the beautiful thing about that is the family come in to visit him, and the grandsons will often say, I really like that yellow Corvette. And Rod will ask me if he can have another one, and I'll go to the reception. They'll print me out another yellow Corvette, give it to him, and then he gives that to the grandchildren. And so there's a really nice loop with including the family, and the family love to talk about the cars with Rod. It's a major talking point. I like to leave things behind if I can. I think there's something nice about that magic. Next slide, please. I'm just checking my time. So loneliness, grief, and a sense of intrusion. We're dealing with a psychological threat. When someone doesn't want to see us, doesn't want to participate, there is a psychological threat, even in just our presence or us going in, when someone is rejecting any offers of social interaction. And there's a real sense of intrusion for us. And that's what we have to figure out, is how do we get around that feeling of intrusion, and how do we find a connecting point? Next slide, please. And this is why detail matters. And I'll show you right now just quickly. Next slide for that one, please. B, I had nothing on B. There was nothing that I could use. It was all trauma in her history. There was trauma. She chased me out of a memory support unit several times, with one of my elders saying, leave him alone, he's my friend. B, and she was very good at pinning people to the ground. B was really baffling all of us. And my manager said, Moz, I really need you to break through. Can you help? Keeping in mind that B, the consultant came to see B. They cleared the room of all items that could be used as any weapon. She used her dentures and hurled them as a missile towards the consultant. She was on high alert, and I could see that something big, some psychological threat was very evident. And so I found only in her file, in inverted commas, again, this is something I look for, inverted commas, someone cleverly saying she said this. She said, my religion's important to me. And I call this serene blue Jesus. So just diving to the next slide. So I went through a whole bunch of slides. So she was obviously, I felt, she was Anglo. So I felt, well, she's probably a Christian. I'm guessing. I don't know what her religion is. Is it Jesus? Is it the Catholic Jesus with the Sacred Heart, the heavy kind of the Christ that died on the cross? Next slide. Or is it more the like a sort of open Jesus, the New Age kind of Jesus? Or is it Mary? Next slide. Mary, Mother of Jesus. But if in some religions people see Mary as a false god, and so the Catholics worship Mary, but other Christians don't. So I didn't know what to choose, so I just picked them all and I printed them up. Next slide. On A3 size paper, and so Lois printed them out for me, and I walked past, so you can see B's walker right there. I walked straight past her, and I held up this picture, and on the desk I'm laying all the other pictures out, and I kept turning them and holding them up, and she started yelling, get that away from me. That is not him. You take that away. That is not what he looks like. And I started to change. Next slide, please, Shannon. I was trying all the different pictures until I got to that one. And right there, she's saying, that's him. That's him. That's what he looks like. Next slide. And I got closer and closer, and I put it down, and I spent, I think, around about 20 minutes talking with B about our Lord, what he meant to her life. And what became evident was that she thought she was in jail. And I guess you could say she kind of was. But she thought she was in jail, and this is why her responses were coming. She was the king of the centre, and this is what she was controlling everything. And this was her role, being a former barmaid. That's what she did at the bar. Next slide, please. And so, for me, it's kind of about disarming the amygdala. And even though something might be very subtle and gentle, and it might not seem like as big as B, it's all about, for me, disarming the amygdala and breaking through. Can we go to the next slide, Shannon? I'm sort of out of time here. So, as we know, at the heart of psychological fear sits the fear of safety, sits the fear of psychological threat. Next slide. And I have tried to get through quite a lot here today. So authentic, meaningful, and mutual engagement comes from our curiosity about others. Doors open when we ask, what makes you tick? Next slide, please. Oh, and from curiosity flows authenticity. When you're genuinely curious about another, authenticity comes from that. And then the next slide. And it connects, authenticity connects because it can be experienced by our intuitive thinking skills. This is why when people go in and they say, hi, Betty, would you like a drink of water? People are doing it to be nice. They're doing it to be generous, to be clear, to be gentle. But it is the tone. The intuitive thinking skills are picking up a tone that is not speaking to me as an adult. And I think this is where our care teams could really, really find deep value in understanding the intuitive thinking skills of where people are at. Next slide, please. So in grief and depression, I would say the same thing. Our rational thinking skills are inhibited when we're in grief, when we're depressed. Our intuitive thinking skills are what we focus on, and this is often where I'm trying to go, because more and more I'm realizing that I'm working in the area of grief. That is where I'm working. I don't think necessarily, and I say this very cautiously, I don't think I'm working with dementia. I think I'm often working with grief. The grief and the loss of understanding what is happening around me and the connections I can no longer seem to achieve or get. And of course, loneliness is part of that. Please jump forward to the next one. Dr. Vivek Murthy, he was the Surgeon General under Obama, went on a big tour to find out what America needed, and he came back, and this is something from his book, a beautiful book. When we become chronically lonely, most of us are inclined to withdraw. Whether we mean to or not, when we're lonely, we push people away. And it seems strange. It seems a strange thing to do, but this is what we do. Next slide, please. So what makes a good image? Make it sharp, keep it clear and simple. Too much data, not too much data. Don't make it too busy. I avoid team photos unless it's a footballer and or a lifesaver or a netballer, basketballer. Sometimes the team photo format is familiar to them, but I try not to go there too early because there's too much going on. I try to keep it really simple. 2 people, maybe 3. Targeted, make sure that it's targeted to their interests. Or sometimes I have to use things that I don't know to test a response. And this is often why I use that photo of my grandson, Max, the roly-poly fatty boombar. Next slide, please. And just pour through those, go through those. Johnny Farnham, look at that. Oh, classic, iconic image. Everyone that plays football recognises that. There you go, Nicole, one for you. For our nurses out there. And look at that. Oh, I'm lucky to have that photo. That's from a friend, an elder gave me that. And hold on, that is one of my favourites. That is a beauty. With anyone that has a rural background, they absolutely love. Cows are in fact smart. Next slide, please. So takeaways. Let's say strategically selected images appeal to intuitive strengths. Much like music, image can take us straight there. Explore possible symbolic connections, as I did with Joan. That's what I learnt from Joan, and I realised the power of that. And symbolic connection, often symbolism will talk more deeply to us when our rational thinking skills have left us. And share you. Don't forget to share you. Images of yourself, really, really powerful. Research personal history for clues, and really ask yourself. I always said, what image is going to bear fruit here? And that one with Rod, with the car, the wall of cars. When I first tried, the car was big, as was with B, the images of serene blue Jesus, as I call it. Curiosity is your superpower. It really is something. And finely tuned relational magic matters. Maylene, thank you for saying that in the post that I wrote about this. You're right. Of course it is about relational magic, but that's for another talk. And make the invitation so delicious that it is impossible to refuse. What's our next slide? Yeah, there we go. Let's go off and have some questions. Maurie, shut up.
Oh my goodness, that's my favorite slide. Stop talking, Maurie. I don't ever want you to stop talking, by the way. I could have done a 5-hour Maurie-thon, which I'm happy to coordinate if that's what anyone's interested in, like a wake-over shift with Maurie. But I just love that. So let's take some Q&As. I just would love to hear thoughts, feelings. I've got hand up from Kathy. Did you have something to say,
Yep.
Kathy?
Of course I've got something to say.
Hi, Kathy.
Maurie, thanks. That was absolutely fabulous. I just had a thought towards the end when you were talking about it, because I do a lot of work with visually impaired people, and this approach would be really, really difficult with them. And so sometimes we might find, if we go with the image approach, that the response isn't what we're looking for, but it might not be because it's not connecting with them, but they just aren't able to see it. In which case we then have to go with one of the other senses. And my first choice would be music then, because
that's really, I wish I had a thought of that. That's such a good question or point, Kathy. I took out a photo and I should have left it. I wrote a post a little while ago about Faye, who's vision impaired, And vision impairment is a silly word for her. She just can't see anything. And so she is totally blind. And I was describing the tuxedo ruffle that I was wearing on my shirt when she was trying to look at it, and then she put a hand out. So I gave her the other one that had just been made, and she put it in her hand and started to feel it and started to describe how it was made. And what wasn't in her file was that she'd been a dressmaker. How did that get missed, you know? And so I often would use objects and put things in people's hands as well to go to that intuitive space. And I always, and because that can also raise the issue of being disrespected, I will often say, I wonder what this is. And I use the word wonder as much as I can. So that's a really important point. And music does, I mean, what I'm doing with the A4 images is doing kind of what music does in a similar way. It's appealing to the intuitive. But that's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question or comment? I'm just looking through the chat. Mary, hello. You may be a little muted. A little bit muted. Yep.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Hi, Maurie. Thank you for the shout out. But there were so many Marys in your presentation, and I was off camera for a bit, and I kept jumping because they thought, oh God, he's. I realized I was a little egocentric, but there were a lot of Marys. But it's funny. I mostly just want to thank you because it's just so unusual and heartening to listen to someone who, and the thing, I know this isn't small, but particularly loved when you said, if it doesn't work, they have the right to say, this isn't what I want. That, which is particularly with, quote, sick people or people who, I mean, we project so much onto them and then it just gets blown up 60 billion times more with people living with dementia. But we're so assumptive and we're so, like, we just insist that our approaches are what is. So one, I want to thank you for that, because I don't know, it feels like you can breathe in it, like they can be. And also it struck me, and maybe I'll use funny language, but that, I don't know, in relating to them as, and you're both working to get to know them, and I think how you are with them is also leaving room for them to become someone else too. Like they're not just these people who are now, calcified in illness for the rest of their day, but they've created something with you. Yeah. It could be this much, could be, and they're there for everyone who's transformed. And so it just feels like, again, it's breathing, because I don't know, to say the obvious, they have, you accept their offer and it's not pathologized, which I don't know. Again, I just want to say bravo, because I've learned in listening to you.
Big on improvisation, and I think that's what improvisation also teaches us, to allow the other to breathe and to read the cues, and also co-contributing, co-collaborating, co-creating.
Yes.
Improvisation. Yeah. When it's working best is when no one's leading, and of course, in a sense, I am leading, but it's exciting when the lead is taken over.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And that we resonate with that. Thank you. I did try to cover a lot, so I do apologise as well. I wanted to get that all out. Thanks, Mary.
Okay, and did we have someone raising their hand? Alwyn, I can't see everyone on the screen, but Leah's given me a little nudge. Alwyn, did you have a question?
Yeah, just for Maurie. So I was doing a good example of that, Maurie, taking care of my own oxygenal pain first. I just couldn't sit for any longer, sorry, but I'm up for Maurie Palooza, that's all I can say. But Maurie, as always, mate, thank you so much for your breath of inspiration. I always need it, and don't realise how much I need it until I listen to you speak. But Flynn says hi, by the way. For a person who's never met, my son, Maurie's had a very lasting impact on him from when I was in Bali. But Maurie, my question, my roundabout long question, because I do an Alwyn Palooza and it wouldn't be as well attended, it'd be, what do you do about timing in terms of pain? You know, because we know about 60 to 80% of our elder residents have undiagnosed or underreported pain. Do you find like the timing of your intervention, you know, chatting to staff about medication, that sort of thing actually helps?
Absolutely. One of the things I've curated over the years is a real connection with the clinical leadership as well as the leadership. Yeah. Some sites don't have the manager will not be a clinician. I'm also working more with doctors. So yeah, pain is important, timing, the delivery of a medication, and of course on the more heavier side of medications, it's not much good when someone is crushed out. But also I'm able to alert people to things like just recently a CPAP machine. I discovered wasn't being used through the chatter. And and then the elder was incredibly tired week after week after week, and discovered that it was just a lack of initiative to use the CPAP machine. And that's not pain related, but it just was really interesting how the RN and then we worked and we escalated that, and then it became part of the staff awareness around this. In terms of pain, yeah, too, because I get to see when people can't hold things, when they can't move their arms and stuff. And so I will talk to people about what I've seen, so that of course I'm working psychosocially, but it would be irresponsible of me to not report those things. But also what's happening when I do that is I feel like I'm really genuinely contributing to this person's holistic health, because it's one thing for a creative to complain about not having holistic health and I'm being ignored, but it would be ignorant of me to ignore the clinical side of that. And I have to say, Alwyn, that our meeting in Bali back in February has highlighted that for me. So I thank you for that. I learn from others. I always do.
Oh, no, we're all on the shoulders of others, aren't we? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one last question from Judith, and I'll make an announcement, and then we might wrap up because it's 8:53 and 23 seconds. Judith, did you want to say?
And I'll ask with an American accent and not an Australian one. Happy holiday to you all. Maurie, you are a gem. How do you communicate to the staff what you've accomplished with the client, and how do they know how to follow through on what you've done?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I curate as well. I foster a relationship with every single AIN, we call them, assistant in nursing care team member that I can. I talk, I speak. Some services, like my buddies at Whidden, they have a relationship-based care model, so they have a buddy, and a number of services, have a meaningful mate is another term that people use. And so I really investigate who that staff member is. But I talk a lot. I will sometimes check in at a handover, but I always talk to I will always go to talk to the RN and make sure that filters down. Sometimes I will ask someone to come with me if I want a person to see a person in a different light. I'll ask them, can I use you for a second, so that they can see what happens with the elder. And also because I write notes, there are some, and this was a bit of a surprise, there are some staff members that read my notes when they want to find out about people. And I know that at one site that this is encouraged. They're encouraging people, if there's something they want to find out, check what Maurie's written. So this is why I think it's really crucial, Judith, for creatives to not just waltz in, deliver a program and then leave. You need to leave something, and you need to record what's happening or what has happened in your observations, and share the manner in which you did it, so that someone else can come in and maybe try to replicate it. So I write like, how did I do this? And that's, I guess, why I started writing on LinkedIn a lot, because I was already doing that. I was writing about what I did and what I was trying to achieve. So it's a really good question, and I hope I've answered that. But I do work really closely with people on the floor, and then that creates an environment, and I'm not second guessing myself because I've got allies everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, it's about a creative coming in and being part of the team and behaving like part of the team.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you said, by the way. I'm an unpolished gem. Oh, Michelle Daniel says, I see all of the 7 Eden alternative domains of well-being. Can I say to you and to Eden, I love you. It was the book Dementia Beyond Drugs that changed my whole perspective when I began in this work. I was introduced to it and it changed my world and my universe. And in that book was a little chapter called A Modest Proposal, which Alan Power wrote many, many years ago, 2011 or 12 or something. And he was talking about opening the doors to memory support units way back then. And the 7 domains of well-being is still what I look at to see what I've missed. I still use those domains and I encourage everyone to look at them.
Amazing. And they are an amazing guide, the 7 domains of well-being, and I use them all the time as well. So, and this is why we're all here to learn and grow from each other and keep sharing knowledge and changing this space. I just want to make a quick announcement after I thank the amazing Maurie for a wonderful session. We all loved it. Please write a book, start a podcast, become a television celebrity. We're all following you forevermore. We want to announce that we have 2 more members that will be supporting this great work in 2026 that have joined us. It is the wonderful Leah Bassiani, who is an independent consultant in this space with her business Uplifting Dementia. She does amazing work around Australia and globally, and she is a seasoned veteran in this space, 35 years, a nurse. We won't hold that against her. I don't know where she is on the screen, but she will be joining OTD and supporting us in our mission in 2026. Yeah. And we have Vicky Kane, the wonderful Vicky Kane has joined our group as well. Vicky, I believe that you're still at Anglicare with your specialist dementia program. Please tell me if I'm wrong.
I am.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Google did not let me down. And we are so delighted to have Vicky and Leah both join us. And hopefully you'll get to hear them both speak and introduce themselves in a bit more length in 2026. We might do that when we come back. We'll give them 15 minutes each to properly introduce themselves and share the work that they're currently doing. But it's been a very busy year for us. Sometimes we've had to spin around on a tail. We all have full-time jobs. We all have competing interests, but we hope that you have enjoyed on this journey with us in 2025. And we are definitely going to continue this work into 2026. So please do spread the word, come to our sessions, talk about it in rooms that we're not in, because that's how we make something go viral. That's how we make change. That's how we put pressure on government and other peak bodies. And we just gently inspire change. And like I always say, if you love us, you'll copy us. If you hate us, you'll copy us. Please, 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 support the work of changing global human rights for people with dementia. So have I missed anything? I think we're coming back in February. We'll have a little break and we will talk about trauma and dementia. That's a great subject to bounce back into the year. We haven't got speakers lined up as yet. So if anyone is interested in presenting or being part, Vicky's already putting her hands up, trauma and dementia. And I think as we go through this space, and I definitely have been in this space for up to my 18th year now, I always knew trauma, childhood trauma and other forms of trauma that you experience throughout your life course are definitely linking to neurocognitive disorders in adult life. I think it needs to be explored more, and I'm really looking forward to February so we can discuss that at length. Enjoy your Christmas break. I'm sure you've all worked your absolute butts off in 2025 in whatever field or capacity you're in. So please do take this downtime to rejuvenate and connect with others and remember who you are. And remember that you are a creative human being trying to change the world. So you must rest and then surround yourself in like-minded people that also understand you and your mission, and know that you are not alone in your desire for a better world for people living with dementia. I have waffled too much because this is my favorite topic, is connecting communities, and you are a wonderful community to connect with. So thanks again, Maurie. Please present every 6 months. I never get sick of hearing you talk. So
you will.
Fantastic. And maybe I'll even give a talk in 2026. I've been trying not to say too much because I really want to make it about a community. But, I've got some stuff to say too. So watch this space. Have a great break and we'll see you in the new year.
Nicola Palooza too.